the art of being a good dad is, how do you put boundaries on those things that interfere with our ability to be present so that we can say yes, so that we can turn our phones off, get down on the floor or sit in the chair and play the game and do the thing, and leave your phone at home and go get ice cream or go for a ride, go to the park. And when you're at the park, be at the park. But if you don't create boundaries physically, people, things, work that are intruding, but also mental boundaries, things like, oh, I want to go check in on the news. What's happening in Gaza? What happened in the NBA Finals game last week? If you allow yourself to give in to those impulses, to consume that information, every single minute that you lose not being present in your house with your family when you can is a minute that you're sacrificing to their own self-worth and their own sense of security and safeness because you weren't present. Well, hey everybody, welcome to Running Free. I'm Jesse Karajet, your host. Thank you so much for being here. And it's Father's Day week. That's right. I said it. We're making it a thing. I think Father's Day should not be a day. It should be a week. And so should Mother's Day, because while it's the most amazing and important job in the world, it can be hard, right? It takes endurance and patience and sacrifice and selflessness. It really just requires you to give so much of yourself. And selfishly, as a father of 3 young kiddos, I'm trying to make it a week. So to all the fathers out there, all the dads out there, keep doing what you're doing. Keep it up. I truly believe that good dads have the ability to change the world. Just imagine what our world would look like if every single person had a good dad and a good mom too. But just think about how much of a difference that could make. And what's so interesting about it is we all have our different definitions on what a good dad is. Maybe you haven't defined it and you just have an idea or a feeling that you're aspiring to. Maybe you've read some books, you've done some research, but there's different perspectives on what a good dad is. And I just wanted to take some time on Father's Day week, that's what we're calling it, to just unpack and answer the question, what is a good dad? So last week, my therapist asked me, she said, Jesse, what is your goal in life? What do you want from life at the end of the day? And I didn't even have to hesitate. I said, I just want to be able to say that I'm a good husband and I'm a good dad. I've had 2 dads. I have my biological father, who was amazing, and I have my stepfather, who was amazing. Did they have flaws? Yes. Were they good dads? Yes. Do I have flaws? Absolutely 1,000,000%. Do I think I'm a good dad? Yes, I do. From my perspective of having to, or should I say, having the blessing of having two dads, it's given me a ton of perspective. And while I can see where they were lacking in my life as a dad, I try to emulate the things that they did that were good. But also, as most parents do, whether you're a mom or a dad, you try to level up. You try to aspire to another level of parenting, usually inspired by your needs, or should I say, the needs that weren't met from your own parents. And I think that's beautiful, and I think that's natural. And even if you had a great upbringing, a great childhood, no trauma, not a lot of dysfunction, I think we all have the potential to just continue to do better than how we were parented. But still, the question is, what does it mean to be a good dad? What does it mean to be a good parent if you're a mom? So what I'm going to try to do is to just introduce one such framework that is specific, but I think encapsulates what it means to be a good dad. And I'm going to kick us off by a clip from Otto Kelly. Otto spent a lot of time specifically with fatherless women, done a lot of research. He's got some great organizations that try to help heal women who are experiencing trauma, which can be tied back to fatherlessness. So here's Otto Kelly talking about 4 pillars, or should I say 4 things that were lacking from fatherless women, but really you could say from fatherless children. So pay attention to this.
I am the executive director of Crisis Pregnancy Center. And in that calling, I see young ladies and young men coming through our doors with a lack of fathering. And when we see that lack of fathering, when they witness a strong male figure, they begin to see themselves in a positive light. Do you realize that close to 81% of teen pregnancies come from fatherless homes? I'm talking 80% of all of our kids that are on the street right now, homeless, fatherless homes. We're talking 71% of the male population in the penal system right now, fatherless homes. The economic impact cannot even be calculated because it's estimated that 41% of the kids that are in fatherless homes will be poorer than their biological dad. It is just absolutely astonishing. Now, the interesting thing about this, we've seen a dramatic change as a direct result of this program. And it was 4 things that they said that they wish they had. Those 4 things when they grew up without a dad was this. They said they wish they had protection. They said they wish they had provision. They said they wish they had presence. And they wish they had praise.
So, as Otto put it, and that's how we're going to focus on this episode, fatherless children themselves state that there are 4 things that they wish they had from a parent, right? And those 4 things: protection, provision, presence, and praise. I'll say it again: protection, provision, presence, and praise. So let's start with the first one, which is protection. So what does protection mean? Immediately where I go to is physical protection, right? Things like strength, things like literally guarding, reacting to threats. Some of us might even go to like, well, do you have guns in the house? Do you have Simply Safe? Do you have like a mindfulness around security? I mean, that's important, and those things can be good. But protection on a deeper level, it doesn't just mean physical protection, it means emotional protections. Do your children feel safe? Do they feel safe to, be themselves around you? Do they feel safe around you? Do you create an environment that makes them feel not only protected from real and present dangers that are physical in nature, meaning a safe house, a safe environment, all those security measures, but also do they feel as though they're free to be themselves and they feel protected to be themselves? And does your presence and your demeanor and posture towards them allow them and encourage them to be who they are? That's what protection means. And you can embody that by not just your physical presence, and we're going to talk about presence, one of the other PRs, but in just how you do your daily life and how you structure your life. When I think about my own fathers, right? Both of them were United States Marines, as am I. Both of them, well, one of them was 6'3", the other one was 6'4". Both were in, 240 pounds, just physically capable, competent guys who could defend themselves and defend me. So physically safe, did I feel that way? Absolutely. However, when I think about my biological father, he was very, very opinionated about the way that I should act and verbally critical when he saw me acting or speaking in a way that went against whatever his goals were for my conduct. So what did that do? That made me want to please him. It made me guarded around what I said, how I dressed, how I acted around him, because I was somewhat fearful of his criticism. So did I feel safe around my father physically? Yes. I can remember a time when we were at a red light, and it was a 2-lane red light, and a guy pulled up next to us in some type of muscle car. It was red. I don't know what it was. And I was daydreaming out the passenger side window, inadvertently making eye contact with this late 20s, probably early 30s, something, I'll just call it what it is, probably a a little bit of a douche. um, but I didn't know it. And he started looking at me and he mouthed to me, "What the hell are you looking at?" And my father caught it from the driver's seat and pushed me back with his right hand and looked at the guy and essentially, and I won't say it on the podcast, but said, "You got a problem, mother? You know what?" And the level and the speed at which my father escalated his temper, yes, but his protection of me and his anger towards this adult, and I was probably in middle school, who was showing aggression towards me. The guy's soul left his body. And of course, he sped up when the light turned green because he had a muscle car and fed off. But I'll never forget how safe that I felt because my father was so quick and willing to jump to my defense. And he didn't have a second to analyze, who is that guy? How big is he? How aggressive does he look? My father didn't care because he was that type of father that said, "You're messing with my kids, you're done." And that planted a seed in me, which frankly, it continues in me. That's my posture. You mess with my kids, you're done, right? But that's physical safety. While at the same time, unbeknownst to him, because he was so verbally critical of how I was acting, I was talking, he created an environment that was a little bit unsafe because I couldn't be myself because I didn't want to get that constructive criticism all the time. So if you're hearing me, it's like, okay, what does safe mean? Yes, physically safe. You want your kids to feel like they're being raised in a household that's protected. While at the same time, I think as dads, we have to be careful to allow our children to be who they are. Because in me, I grew up with some insecurities about who I was, and it stemmed from my father's own criticism while well intended. And I give him a ton of grace for that. So protection is the kind of first pillar of what it means to be a good dad.
Look, 1 in 10 Americans today struggle with alcohol use disorder, and I was one of them. Did you know that there is a safe, science-backed daily pill that you can take to drink less or even quit alcohol for good? It's called naltrexone, a doctor-prescribed medication that you get online, and our sponsor, Or Health, is the nation's leading provider of naltrexone. To date, Or Health has helped over 35,000 people find freedom from alcohol, and I'm proudly one of them. To get started, text STRENGTH to 710-710. Again, that's STRENGTH to 710-710 and get started on your journey to finally find freedom from alcohol.
So let's talk about the next P, or should I say PR, provision. And when you hear provision, I think it's important to call out that where a lot of us go to is hardworking and consistent. Those things are good. Rich, wealthy can be good, but that's not what provision is. And as a matter of fact, there's a lot of research that shows that if you have restraint, even if you can give your kids everything they need, right? The big backyard swing set, each of them gets their own bedroom, big house, pool, hot tub, trips, whatever it is. If you show restraint and you give them less and you teach them about the importance of money and being frugal and responsible, that creates a ton of value and they appreciate what they have so much more. So when we talk about provision, we're not talking about being rich and wealthy and just basically showering your kids with all the things. It's talking about meeting their needs and modeling what it means to be consistent and hardworking, because being consistent and hardworking and showing up and being responsible and modeling that for your kids pays dividends exponentially in helping them to understand how to be an adult and how to be providers themselves. But key here is when you hear provision, you don't have to be wealthy, and most of us aren't, right? But it is important to be able to show them that as parents, and this kind of goes back into protection, that you can meet their needs. And not only is that important, obviously, because shelter and safety and food and water and clean air, like those are pivotal just to survive as living beings, right? But by being able to give them those things, that goes back into them feeling safe and being in a household that allows them to just kind of thrive, right? So when we think about provision, think about it as though you need to meet their material needs, but also in so doing, you're meeting their emotional needs. And speaking of emotional needs, it's a great kind of segue to go into the next pillar, the next PR, if you will, which is presence. I heard this kind of cheap and easy cliche once, but if you spend half as less money and twice as much time with your children, the impact is tremendous. When I think about my father, he had an hour and a half commute one way, so 3 hours every day, 5 times a week. I grew up in a divorced household. I would be with my father, Friday through Sunday. Despite that commute, despite, being married to my stepmom and having at the time whatever his other pressures and responsibilities were, my dad would drive 35 minutes after he got home from North Jersey after that commute to pick me up every single Friday. He would spend hours and hours with me. He'd bring me everywhere. He'd talk to me, look me in the eyes, the ride both ways to and back from my parents' house, my mom's house where I lived. And the impact of that presence, because by being present, we're showing love. By blocking out the many things that seek to interfere with our relationship, things like work, things like play, things like leisures, hobbies, friends, distractions, YouTube. As parents, if we can block those things out, we're showing our kids that they are what matters. And that sense of mattering, of meaning, is the most important thing for a kid to possibly have. So presence is by far the most important thing that we can give or gift to our children, hands down. Something that, just happened in my house the other day, which, it's sobering and it wakes me up, but it's also kind of heartbreaking. My oldest daughter, who's 7, came into the room. I was in the middle of cleaning up after a messy morning. I had work on my mind. I knew I had some emails I had to get to, and I had this podcast stuff I had to do. And she came into the room and she said, "Daddy, will you play Monopoly with me? We've got this kids version of Monopoly." And I said, "Yes." And her reaction was, "Really?" To which made me say, "Yeah, why? I'll play Monopoly." And she said, "Well, normally you're too busy." Those are the things as parents we need to pay attention to. Those are the signals and the keys that our children are giving us, where her expectation was a no. And you have to give yourself grace, because sometimes responsibilities, true responsibilities, do interfere and even should take priority over something like playing a board game. And if you have multiple young kids like I do, I could have my 5-year-old coming in and say, "Go out on the trampoline with me," as my 2-year-old is saying, "Daddy, come, do something goofy. Let's go squirt this squirt gun in the house, in the playroom," which is a no. So sometimes you have all these competing requests and priorities that are hitting you at the same time. But the art of being a good dad is, how do you put boundaries on those things that interfere with our ability to be present, so that we can say yes, so that we can turn our phones off, get down on the floor or sit in the chair and play the game and do the thing and do the wrestle, and leave your phone at home and go get ice cream or go for a ride, go to the park. And when you're at the park, be at the park. But if you don't create boundaries physically, people, things, work that are intruding, but also mental boundaries, things like, I want to go check in on the news. What's happening in Gaza? What happened in the NBA Finals game last week? If you allow yourself to give in to those impulses, to consume that information, every single minute that you lose not being present in your house with your family when you can is a minute that you're sacrificing to their own self-worth and their own sense of security and safeness, because you weren't present. So if there's one takeaway from this, find ways to be present and put up guardrails in order to do that.
Look, life can be hard and stressful sometimes. We all know that. But when it comes to supplements, why is it that nobody talks about stress and resilience? For me, I take the adaptogen stack from Momentous Supplements. It's a daily blend of ashwagandha, rhodiola, and L-theanine, all clinically backed to help you stay calm, focused, and resilient. I'm proudly partnered with Momentous Supplements because they are the industry's best. They don't cut corners. Everything's third-party tested, used by pro athletes, and high quality. Head to livemomentous.com and use code STRENGTH for 35% off your first order. Again, that's livemomentous.com, code word STRENGTH for 35% off your first order, and get started today.
And the last pillar, if you will, praise. Words of affirmation are so important. Action is the most important, right? And we talked about protection and providing and presence and all those things. Like where you place yourself physically and the things that you do are important. But words of affirmation are so important. You know, when your child does something that makes you feel great, and when you recognize that they just accomplished something, whether it's in sports, academically, or even just made you a bracelet. I'm wearing two. I'm always, if you pay attention to the show, I've always got bracelets on. My kids are always making me jewelry. When they dedicate time to make something or do something, or even if they just look pretty, look cute, if you feel it, say it. And maybe even if you don't, say it. But there's so much research that shows that verbal affirmation is so important. So make sure you're praising your child. And then this next piece, 80% of communication is nonverbal. Sometimes you don't even need words to show praise. Sometimes it's a look and a smile and a hug, which takes presence and intentionality, by the way. But sometimes you can give praise just by your posture towards your children. And this is I mean, honestly, this made me cry, but here's a beautiful, beautiful example of nonverbal and how words aren't necessarily necessary in order to show love. This is boxer Conor Benn after just a grueling loss, and he leaves the ring, and his father, who is also a professional fighter, a boxer, was there waiting for him. And if you're listening to the audio only, I'll do my best to kind of recap it afterwards. But here's just a beautiful clip of how an embrace between father and son just can be so powerful, and it's all nonverbal. I mean, how beautiful is that, right? I mean, first and foremost, you can just tell that relationship was built on decades of that father showing up. I mean, just that boxer, Conor Benn, I mean, you look at him, he's muscular, he's fierce, he can fight, he's got tattoos. But when he had a hard moment, we had a letdown, and he comes out of that ring and his dad's standing there, you could tell that his dad is the only person in the world that he felt safe with to come up. And so much was said without any words with those two men, both physically imposing, confident men, but the love there, the kiss on the cheek, I mean, that's what it's all about. And if you can build that relationship with your kids as a dad, I mean, look, that's what it's all about. And back to the question from my therapist, what do you want in life? I want to be that dad. I want my kids to look at me that way. And if you can't see the video because you're listening to audio, I encourage you to look up Conor Benn. All you got to type into Google or YouTube or something is like Conor Benn boxer hug, and you will find it. So that's it. Or I should say that's one way to do it, being a good dad, right? Protection, provision, presence, and praise. If you can have some semblance of all of those attributes as a father, you're not just going to change your household, you're going to change your kid, and your kid's going to go out and change the world. And if we can all do that, the world would be a much better place. So thank you so much for joining the show. To all the good dads out there, or even all just the dads out there, keep on keeping on, keep doing what you're doing. It's so worth it. I hope this episode was helpful, and I thank you so much for joining the Running Free podcast. See you next time. All right, everybody, that's the show, folks. Thank you so much for tuning in to this podcast and spending some time with us today. We've got a favor to ask. If you enjoyed the show, would you please consider subscribing to the show and even leaving a rating and review? That simple act drastically helps us reach more people in our mission to help them live better, longer, healthier lives. You can also follow us if you'd like on Instagram and YouTube for regular tips and motivation around mental health, addiction, and so much more. Know that your support fuels our brand and is greatly appreciated. So until next time, stay strong and live deep.